Hello and welcome to my podcast, Restaurant Talk. I'm your host, Gazwan. Thank you for joining me today. For those of you guys who have watched some of my other episodes, thank you, or thank you for coming back. For those of you guys who are new to the podcast, welcome. A couple things we're going to go over today, but before I kind of move forward, I just want to ask you guys, if you enjoy these episodes, please subscribe. That'll help out the channel, bringing more episodes of different topics about the restaurant industry and the bar industry. So please subscribe and like our videos so we can do more for you guys and to educate you guys about the restaurant industry. So we'll have some people on board as well in order to go over some of the things that you guys want to talk about. So today's episode is going to talk about the employee theft in the restaurant and bar industry. But before I get started into that, what I want you to do is, if you haven't watched the episodes before these, so the two episodes before this one was about the employee theft and the psychology behind that. So that really talks about, why are the employees stealing, what causes them to steal, what are the psychology and the things that makes them do that. And then the episode before this one is about the surveillance cameras and how to kind of look for certain things, whether it's employees or customers that are stealing, or just to kind of watch out what are the things that to look for. Okay, so today's episode we're going to talk about what are the ways that the employees are stealing and how to catch them and how to kind of avoid that happening in the future. So one of the things that I want to get started with, again, there's a lot of different ways. These are not every single method. I'm sure there's hundreds and hundreds of ways. But this is just to kind of help you open your eyes to kind of watch a couple of things that the employees are doing, and hopefully you can eliminate it. So one of the basic ways is that employees actually just don't ring the item in. So for example, when you have employees that have the ability to get their own items, such as sodas, coffees, teas, salads, desserts, anything that they can kind of go get on their own without having to ring it in. For me, it rings a red flag in ways that employees can just give stuff away to the customers and not charge for it, and they can make an extra tip on that. So you'll see a lot of that. So even if they actually have to get their own stuff for logistics reasons, still have them ring the stuff in so it goes to a kitchen printer or a bar printer, so someone can see if they're pulling out a dessert. They see that the ticket was rung in for that the dessert, and someone can kind of watch for that. Or if you have cameras in the kitchen, same thing. If a ticket came in for that, you can kind of watch that as well. So it ties into your systems. So they give them a better tip when they don't get charged for certain things. So be careful with that. So the other thing is that employees serve customers after they have closed out their shift. So if their shift is closed out, whether it's a server or a bartender, and someone comes in and says, "Oh, can I get a coffee to go?" or they closed out their table and the customer wants something to go, like a dessert or something like that. So the waiter or the bartender will just go get that item and simply not charge for it or charge for it, but simply put the money in their pocket because they're not ringing it in because they don't want to start a new checkout report for themselves. So you'll see something like that where they actually just don't ring it in. And after their reports are done, and they can just kind of hand it to them. They give them a good tip, or they just take that money and pocket it. If it's cash, more than likely it's probably going to be cash in those situations. What employees will also do is ask the manager for a void of an item that the customer didn't like. The things they do is they'll ask, way after the customer left, and then they'll complain and say, "Well, I couldn't find you, or you weren't around, or you were busy in the kitchen, or you were talking to someone." They're not going to do it right there and then. Because the manager would have probably gone to the table. But anytime there is a void of an item that wasn't the customer didn't like, the manager should always touch the tables. Once you let them know, hey, they didn't like this drink, or they didn't like this dessert, or they didn't like this appetizer, manager should always go to the table to make sure, can you get them something else? I mean, look, it happens, whether something wasn't cooked properly, or there was the CO2 is out on the beer lines or on the soda lines, or the coffee was too old, whatever. If it gets voided, manager has to go to the table and try to make it right, being a little bit more proactive. I know it's kind of late at that point, but being proactive so it doesn't get worse, or so we can make them happy. Maybe we can get them another dessert or get them something else, maybe comp them a drink to make them happy. But by doing that, it confirms and lets the waiter know, hey, if you are trying to do something fishy, we're going to catch you. Okay. So don't wait until the customer has left and then ask for a void. If that's the case, for me as a manager, I would have voided off because I would tell them, see someone. There's got to be one manager on the floor in order to be able to take care of those situations before the customer walks out. You don't want them to walk out and then go tell the manager, oh, I needed that void, you weren't around. Okay. So be careful with that. So if you have items that are, a steak or a side dish or whatever the case may be, if it's voided, it goes to those printers that were designated to, and it'll say void. If something was voided and used with a manager number by mistake, or that they're trying to steal a manager card or manager number for someone who had left. When the void goes in the kitchen and the guys, are notified to tell someone, hey, or here's the voids. If they see a void with a manager number, and they can see that on the report. If they see a void, you say, I made that steak. There was nothing wrong with it. Or I made those mashed potatoes. There was nothing wrong with them. Why is it becoming a void? So they can question it, go back to the manager. All point of sale systems have the ability to go back and look at your reports to see who the employee was, what check number it is, what the item was that was being voided, and then who the manager that voided the item on it. So if you see someone that no longer exists, then you have to question it to see, who's floating that manager card, and that's when they can get fired for that. Okay. So anytime you have a manager or an employee that no longer works for you guys, and you're using a point of sale system and you're using a number or a card for them to log into, when those employees no longer work there, you need to go into the system and make sure you take out the employee number or delete the card that they use so nobody else can use that. I've seen that a lot where employees will use someone else's number. This is another topic where if someone has left and they have shared each other's numbers and each other's numbers, or a manager has an actual number, not a card, will memorize that number for future. So what they'll do is, for example, they'll ring in a drink and it will go to the bar, and the bartender doesn't necessarily pay attention all the time. It has that person's name, and he doesn't pay attention if that person no longer works there. But we'll make the drink and they will send it to the table. Let's say it's their friends or it's their regulars or someone that they know. They take that drink to that table and close it out to cash, and they can do that a couple times. And when they run their own report, it doesn't register on their own report, but the manager doesn't register to that. The employee will get the report, and the drop will be fine because they rang it under everything under their number. But you'll see if you at the end of the night your drop is short, and based on your system balance report. So if your system balance report says you're supposed to drop $1,000, and you collectively with all of your employees you have say $900, then your system is short $100. What I usually like to do when I ever come into that situation that I'm short is I run employee report for every single employee in house for that night, and then I'll check each person's drop and I check it off and see who did I miss. If I missed someone, then I'm like, okay, well, that was the person that I missed. I need to get a drop from. And sometimes in those cases, it is someone who's trying to play around, and they will ring under someone else's number. So you'll have to go back and check the cameras and see who's the one who rang in those items under that check. Okay. Believe it or not, I also caught some mistakes where managers were ringing under their number and closed it out by mistake. So it could be a mistake, legitimately. So by running those employee reports, you get all your reports that were generated under a sale. So you'll see that employee, that manager rings something in and close it under their number, which it shouldn't have been. So it was a mistake. Then you would have to void that out or do an adjustment on it in order to be able to correct it for the day for the controller in the morning to make sure that your banks are correct for the day. Okay. The other thing I see sometimes is that the employees will report a fake spill. They'll say, oh, I spilled this drink. So what they do is they'll just go to the bartender and say, I spilled a glass of wine, fake it, and then get another glass of wine and bring it to the table when it literally either didn't spill or something else happened, and they're just trying to get free drinks for their table. So anytime there's something gets spilled, the employee should be known to re-ring that item in on that check, and then before they leave, have a manager split that off and then comp it to a spill so it registers correctly on your report. But again, anytime something spills and you need to bring something out, you have to ring it in and then get it comped. But the manager should definitely make it to the table, and just apologize if the spill was spilled and never reached the table. Then you don't need to go to the table. You just need to, again, check the cameras, make sure they spilled it. If someone bumped into you or you couldn't hold the tray properly, I get it. It happens when someone's new. That could happen. So check the cameras, make sure you ring it in, because that needs to get comped for those of you guys, which we're going to be talking about in the future about your food cost and liquor cost, is to make sure that if something gets spilled or something gets comped, that you actually ring it in and then get it comped to spillage. So that should be on your report that you can kind of take off of your inventory for the end of the month. Okay. Another thing I see that is employees will tell customers that the system is down. Okay, oh, our system is down, our credit cards are down. We can't get into the system, so it's cash only, for now or something like that. And it again could be legit, but they need to make sure they go back into the system when it turns back on to ring it in and close it to cash if they're being honest. But there's sometimes when the system is not down, the credit cards are not down, and they request people to pay with cash in order to take that money and pocket it. Okay, so telling the customers that the system is down or credit cards are down in order to kind of collect that cash money, I see that as well. So be careful with that and just kind of watch your employees. Another one is kind of tricky, which it can be in different scenarios depending on your environment. I actually caught myself by mistake when I was my first serving job. I found out about this, and it was kind of by mistake. I caught myself, or my manager also kind of noticed it, and I'm like, well, how did I make way more money than I thought? And what it was based on is it's not just for buffets, but it was streamlines around buffets and something else, which I'll go over in a second. But when you have a situation where you are selling buffets, where no tickets are going into the kitchen, and you're basically just ringing something in and then presenting a check for 2 buffets. And if it's cash, keep the cash and then keep the check. The next person, they would give them that the 2 buffets as well, and then come back and take the cash if it was paid in cash, pocket it, and that's what's called a floating check. So you're basically using the same check multiple times, and then at the end of the day, closing that out. You're not going to do it on all the checks. You're going to do it to maybe 1, and then you can do that 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and then close it to cash at the last transaction at the end of the night. But however many that if the buffet is $20, do that times 2. 2 people times 5. That's 10 people. That's a lot of money at the end of the day to collect and steal. So, and then buffets are kind of tricky because it's really hard to kind of get a really close food cost on that, because it is a buffet and you don't know how much is get thrown away or how much are people eating. It's not like a true plate cost, so it's a little bit trickier to kind of get a true plate cost with a buffet and floating checks. So you need to have a better system for that. So whether the waiter rings it in and then it goes to the cashier to get closed out, so kind of limiting the amount of steps or who's controlling the tickets will help and alleviate the cost for floating checks. The other way, what's called in the floating check, is someone comes in, they order 2 burgers and 2 sodas. What they'll do is, they present the sodas, and they bring the sodas themselves because they're getting it their own. They don't have to send the order to the bar. So the next order that comes, so they present the check. Let's say the check is for $30. $15 for the burgers, and then let's say $2.50 for the sodas. So you got $30 for the burgers and another $5 for the sodas. You're at $35. So they present the check for $35. The customer pays $35, maybe leaves another $5 for tip. You're at $40. So what the waiter will do is come back and take those 2 sodas and move them to a separate check. Now the bill is only $30. So that $5 of sodas was moved to another check, and they're left with $30, and they'll close that check to the $30 for cash. The next table comes in, and let's say it's the same scenario. They're ordering 2 sandwiches, whatever the case may be, and 2 sodas. So they're not going to ring in the sodas now. So what they're going to do is, so when they split the check off for the 2 sodas, now when they're ready to present the bill to the new customers for the new table, they'll bring those 2 sodas back onto that check. Okay, so they present that check. They had 2 chicken sandwiches, let's say, same price, whatever. And now they present the check, and they pay, again, $35. The waiter comes in and then splits those 2 sodas back off again. And instead of $35, the bill is only $30, and they close that to cash. So what they do, they can do that multiple times a day and split off the soda, put it on, split it off, put it on, and then at the end of the night, close it to the cash transaction. So whether it's done through a full check of like a buffet style, or if they're doing it through a moving of sodas or coffees or desserts or whatever the case may be, with their ability to be able to get their own items. Bartenders can't sit there and make sodas all day long. I get it, but that's where the employees will tend to kind of either float a check or steal, whether it's coffees, sodas, teas, sometimes desserts, and sometimes salads, anything that they kind of can get on their own. Bottles of water, which we've seen as well. If it's a bottle of water, it might cost $8 or something like that, $6. They tend to kind of do that, whether it's they're floating that bill as well. So keep an eye on that. What I recommend when I used to do it as a point of sales programmer is that we'll allow the employees to split the check, which is fine. You can split the check off. Something happened, whatever the case may be, you address it to your manager as soon as possible. If it's an issue with the customer, if the issue with the check, or they didn't like something, that's fine, but address it right away. But do not allow them to bring items back. So they're allowed to split. They're not allowed to add. So they have way more chances that they need to split something off, but very little times that they need something to be added on. Probably a little bit more in a bar where people actually kind of combine checks or pay for someone's bill. But in the restaurant environment, it's not as often. So I would say allow them to split off an item, but do not allow them to add it back to that check. Because if you do that, then you're leaving your ability to have them split it off, put it on, split it off, put it on, and open up a can of worms in order to have them float sodas, coffees, teas, desserts, whatever. And then that gives them the ability to, make way more money than they should have. You lost the money on your product, and you don't even really pay attention to that. And it's hard to do that, especially if you guys are really not doing inventories, and then you find yourself, well, why am I losing so much money? And what ends up happening, one waiter tells another waiter, and another waiter tells another waiter, and becomes the norm where you don't bring sodas in, and you find yourself that you're losing money or not even making money on some of these items, especially if you guys are not doing inventory. So it's very, very important to catch these things to see, and other things. I'm huge on running menu item reports, and the chef should look at menu item reports, and a bar manager should look up menu item reports to see what's been selling, okay? To see what's selling and what is coming and what's going. So let's say, for example, the bottles of water. I know for a fact I filled up the refrigerator with a dozen bottles of water. I look at my menu item report, and let's say I sold 6 bottles of water. There should be 6 in the refrigerator. If I only see 4, then chances are that they were stolen, given away, not rung in. So that gives you the ability to know, what's moving, what's not, or what was stolen and not rung in. So it's very important to kind of run your menu item report to see what's selling, and kind of use multiple channels of ideas in order to kind of catch and making sure that your employees are doing the right thing. And if they see a manager do this, then they're going to kind of slow it down, or talk to each other and say, hey, look, this is not a place where we want to do this, because so and so is really on top of things. So you have to be careful. What I used to do for the first scenario of the floating buffet checks, because I did work in a hotel for years, so we had breakfast buffet, and sometimes we have dinner buffets or event buffets or whenever we had it. So what I used to do is I used to run a report on an hourly basis. Okay, so in order to watch for things like that, and you could do that also with the sodas. So when you run an open check report, it'll tell you how long that check has been open for. So if you see a check that's been open for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, that'll definitely give you a red flag to let you know that, why is this check open for so long? Especially if it was like a two buffet item, then you know for a fact that check has been moving back and forth, or be utilized multiple times in order to make more money. So when I would run a report, and I would just walk around and say, hey, I would ask questions. Why? And I look at the table. If it is legit, I see, because I've been on the floor, that table has been there for 2 hours, 3 hours, and maybe they're in a meeting or whatever the case may be. But if I see that table, no longer there, and the check is open, I'm going to question it. Why is this check still open? Why did you close out your checks? Because they're supposed to close out the checks as soon as possible. Depending on the environment, in hotels sometimes, we didn't have a cashier. Uh, some places we did, some places we didn't. Sometimes the waiters were their own cashiers, just like in a restaurant. And other times that the waiters either put the money cashed out themselves, or we had a cashier. So it all depends. But I would run a report and ask questions and say, hey, why is this open? What's going on with it? Okay, so then if they see that, then they know that you're watching them, and they're going to need to, if they're thinking about doing something like that, they're going to kind of stop it. Okay. The other thing is I noticed is a lot happens with the servers and bartenders. I see a lot of servers and bartenders are in cahoots with each other into kind of saying, hey, I'm going to ring something in. I'm going to ring one beer. You're going to serve me two, because I want to, give out a free beer to my friends, or my family, or whoever is there. My regulars, or whatever the case may be. They'll be in cahoots, and they're actually kind of split, some of the extra tips between the bartenders and servers. So you'll see a lot of the bartender server kind of working together in order to kind of make more money for both of them. Especially if they're good friends, kind of pay attention to that, or if they're, family members, or dating, or whatever the case may be. You'll see a lot of bartenders and servers giving away free drinks, obviously for, better tips, whether it's at the bar or at the table. We always had a policy, and I worked in a lot of corporate locations, franchises, Hilton's, Marriott's, Sheraton's. Marriott was probably one of the toughest ones. No ticket, no drink. And the other thing is, at the Marriott, if you're sitting at the bar, anytime you ordered a drink, the bartenders had to print that receipt and drop it in front of the customer, or put it in a cup and replace it. So what that does is gives it a visual. Okay. So for us as a manager, we could be standing in the corner of the room, not letting the bartender know that we're watching them, but we can see if they dropped a drink, another receipt would have to be rung in order to present it to the customer. So even if you're not actually standing in front of it, via cameras, or via standing in the corner and paying attention, you'll see if they actually rang in that drink. So that was a corporate policy at my Hiltons and Marriotts and stuff like that. So you're more than welcome to kind of use that. You're going to use more paper, I get that, but it gives you the policy, especially if you're trying to watch some employees. That could be something that you can watch out for as well. The other thing is, I also noticed between the kitchen and bar, where depending on the ingredients that they're using, sometimes they use beer, like a beer battered, wings, or beer battered chicken tenders, or whatever the case may be, that they actually use, beer from the bar. But the thing is, it's never rung in. It should be rung in. It should be, closed to a kitchen comp, or whether it's beer, wine, anything that's coming from the bar. What we used to do is, the kitchen guys always had their own stuff, whether it's, wine purchased for their department specifically, whether it's wine, or, vodka, if they have penne vodka or something like that. But if they have, beer that's coming from a tap, whether it's like a stout beer, like a Guinness, if they're making a Guinness beer battered wings or tenders or something like that, they actually have to get it from the bar, and they pour them a pitcher or two, or however many they need based on that recipe. And chances are, I've seen times where the kitchen guys will have a few swigs, let's just say, and it happens. Again, these are the things that you need to kind of keep cameras in the kitchen to keep an eye on your kitchen crew, because they will take some of that beer and at the end of the night when they're doing their stuff and have a couple swigs, where also they have the vodkas in the kitchen, or if they have their sherries and their wines and their um, things like that in the kitchen. Who's to say that they're not taking advantage of that as well? Okay. So I do see some stuff between bartenders and servers and bartenders and kitchen guys in cahoots. I give you a beer, you give me a burger, and back and forth, things like that. So it kind of one hand washes the other hand. So it kind of help each other out. Okay. And then again, if you're doing your food cost and liquor cost, you'll catch some of these things. It's it might be small, but at least if you kind of have your policies and making sure that your employees are knowing that you're watching them, kind of helps you kind of not having to be on top of them all the time. So, but they know, hey, look, this guy's not messing around. Let's just not do this here, because we can get in trouble. Okay. The other thing is I see is, again, you have to watch for is where employees will state that the customers left without paying. Okay. If they left without paying, I would check the cameras right away. Okay. Whether it's not that I don't trust my employees, but I want to see it for myself. Whether if I'm going to need to file a police report or whether I need to fire an employee, I need to check the cameras. Yes, I'll run outside to see if we can catch them. If the person's gone, they're gone. But I'm going to check the cameras to make sure what the employee is telling me is legit. If someone walked out on their table, I want to make sure that they're being taken care of. I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. I want to make sure those people never come back into our restaurant again. Whether we flag them or whether we call the cops on them next time, or maybe even send the report to the video to the cops just to kind of flag it. But check the cameras. If you see that the story is a different story from what the employees are telling you, then you need to kind of take actions from that. So if you see that the customers did leave money on the table, and whether the employee picked it up, pocketed it, maybe lost it, or maybe somebody else picked it up. I've seen like bussing the table will take the money and either leave it somewhere and forget it and it gets lost, or they keep it for themselves, or with a hostess as well, same thing, or anybody who's cleaning the table, or even a manager. What I've seen is that if someone else is bussing the table, our policy was always to leave the money on the table. Do not touch the check for the employee. The employee picks up their own money, and then they take care of that. So the hostess, the manager, or the busser does not pick up the check, especially if it's cash, or if there's a cash tip in there and they pay with a credit card. Do not touch the guest checkbook. So you don't want to be responsible or liable. Look, accidents happen. It could drop out of the book. Someone else can pick it up, and then now you're out of the money, and now you're lost the money. So, and again, you always have cameras. You can always take a look at the cameras to see if something fell, someone else picked up the money, or someone legitimately stole it, or it was a mistake, or the waiter. If you start seeing it, again, you're still going to make a report. Always make a report on, especially something like that, whether it's a walkout and the customer legitimately walked out and forgot to pay, or legitimately left without paying on purpose. But if I start noticing that my same employee is doing this on a regular basis every couple of weeks, claiming fake walkouts, I'm going to have a different conversation with that person. I really am. I mean, it's yeah, you documented it once, twice, and then you need to have a conversation and say, hey, I just want to let you know, cameras don't lie. You claiming that there is a fake walkout, and the camera states every time that you claim that customer actually did pay, and you're the one who picked up that money, and you're the one who pocketed that money, and you're the one who actually put that claim in saying there was a fake walkout, and you're stealing from the restaurant. So that conversation is going to be different then. Then I'm going to file a report. I'm definitely going to fire that employee, and I may even take legal actions towards that employee, because if they're doing it with us, I'm sure they've done it 100 different places before us, and they're going to do it for another 100 different places after us. So those are the things that I would look for as well when they're trying to state for false walkouts, is to check the cameras, make sure what they're telling you is correct, and making sure that you file a report to let all the managers know, and then keep an eye on it to see if you start seeing patterns with that same employee. Okay. Another way is that they'll claim that they actually put something on someone's check and it was the wrong check, and then they had to split it off, and then tell the manager, "Oh, I need you to void it off because they're already gone." So they'll claim they put it on the wrong check and they split it off themselves, and you weren't around, and they'll do that in order to give them the customers more drinks, so they're not paying for it, and just claim that it was I put it on the wrong check, but you weren't around, so I had to split it off, and then I needed to get voided off. So same thing. What I used to do at the next morning, anytime there was a voids, I would look at all the void reports as the GM and as a food and beverage director when I was, or even just as managers. Look at your void reports, void and comp reports, and maybe you have to question a couple of these things. Were they legitimate? Did you just give the card to an employee to do the voids on their own? And I see that more often than it really should be. Okay. Anytime that there's any kind of comps, anytime that there's any kind of voids, anytime there's any kind of issue, it needs to be addressed right away by that manager, and they're the ones who are actually doing the voids and comps, and questioning and touching the table to make sure that it was a legit issue, and how do we fix it. So we actually need to lower our voids and comps by checking up on things and making sure it's legit, or kind of being proactive. As managers, what we used to do is we had to touch every single table, not because if there's something wrong, but we would check up on every table just to make sure, if something, if the waiter didn't go back after 2 minutes or 2 bites, which is industry policy, to check up on the table, we as managers would float around and check on every table. If you see someone who's kind of like, trying to flag a waiter to see, maybe their food wasn't cooked to temperature, I'm catching it right away and checking on and say, "Hey, is everything okay? Can I get you anything else? Is your steak cooked to your preference, or is there anything that you need from us?" So by touching every single table, you're being proactive, not being reactive to an issue, and then that way you can kind of save yourself from any kind of voids and comps for that, and also save the waiter. So, and then I'll also see patterns and see, if it's the same waiter requesting so many voids, what was the reason behind the void, why did it happen, what day, then I start seeing patterns, because I'm very analytical, and I like to see certain patterns. If I see certain patterns, certain employees, maybe they're only getting on Thursday. Why on Thursday? Is it they're bringing their friends in only on Thursdays? Is it because a certain manager or a certain bartender is working on a Thursday? So, I connect the dots, and then I can, maybe it's my, police thinking mind, even though I was never a cop. I wanted to be a cop, but that's a different story. I kind of find myself that, hey, I watch for these things. And as a business owner, I've been a business owner. I've had restaurants, and I've had convenience stores, and I've had businesses where, my convenience store got robbed twice. My restaurant, my prep cook was stealing knives from us. So, I take it personal when I have any of these things happen. And that's why I talk about it, so I can help you guys as business owners to kind of, make sure this doesn't happen to you guys, and unfortunately, you can't catch every single person every single time. But the least amount of times that it happens, it can help your bottom line. So, the other way I see that employees, are taking food and liquor home without asking. If it happens to be their lunch and they rang it in, or they get their free meal and they take it home, fine. But if you see them kind of, taking small things, before you know it, the small things becomes the big thing, and they start taking food home, and they're their friends and their families, and before you know it, the whole car is full of food. So have a limit, have a policy of what you are allowed to take home if it was your meal, or if you don't want your meal, you can have it later and take it home because you just don't have time to eat it. that's another policy. The other thing is I see sometimes is where you could lose money is if you have a special or if you have an item that's a customer requested item that's not on the menu, and the waiter has the ability to ring in something at a lower price. So if they ring it in as an open food or open liquor or open beverage, and they put in their own price, is where it gets kind of tricky because you want to make sure they're charging the correct price. And the reason why we use the open food, open liquor is when the items are not in the system. So when items are not in the system, we use the open food book. Every single time it has to be authorized by a manager for an open food or open liquor. If it's authorized by a manager, then they're watching what is the price that it's going in there. If you have it open that they don't require manager authorization on a POS system, then you're leaving yourself open for them to ring in whatever they want. Okay, so open food, open liquor should have a manager authorization in order to be able to not ring those stuff in without a prior authorization to make sure that the item is in. Now, whatever that item is, I mean, if it was a special, then you should have them in the system. But usually they're used for items that were like, oh, we forgot to put in this item, or we forgot to, we just got a new bottle of wine. We forgot to put it into the system yet. So that's why it's done. So it should be very, very minimal. You shouldn't have to see open food, open liquor every single day on your report, your menu item report. It should just be very minimal, because when you ring in an open food, open liquor, you can't track what the item was, and you can't track what your inventory is based on the item. So try to minimize that as much as possible, and use that only when you have a need. If something is not in the system, or if someone requests something, say, hey, can I just get half a dish of pasta? When I have someone ask that, and if I see that they're regular, I'm going to actually put it in the system. Maybe I hide it so it's not used all the time, but put it in half order of pasta. Someone else may request it as well. So put it in half order pasta, and if it was, $20, put it in as $10 because you're going to use it again. So that way you're not using the open food, open liquor on a regular basis, so you can steer away from that. Okay, and it should always be in manager authorization for any kind of open food, open liquor, so you can watch for that. Okay, so that's what I have for right now. The next episode is going to be how bartenders steal from the restaurant. I don't want to make this too long so you guys don't get too tired, but the next episode is going to kind of follow suit to these episodes. So the two episodes before this one was about the employee theft and the psychology behind it. Why are they actually stealing? What are the reasons behind it? And then the episode before this we said was about the surveillance cameras and tying your surveillance cameras into your theft process and making sure you can catch these employees and how they're doing it in regards to making sure that you watch the cameras and pay attention to that. And today's episode was basically kind of just a few spurts of what are the things that they're doing right now on the floor to steal from you guys. And the next episode that I'm going to do after this will be on how the bartenders are stealing from your restaurants. And then also we'll talk into about the maybe how managers or even the chefs or even bookkeepers, get into the theft part of it. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, like the channel. It gives us a lot of help in order to kind of figure out, if we're doing a good job, if I am helping you guys out in the industry. If there's things that you guys want me to talk about, please let me know. Put it in the comments section. And if I have some time, I'll add it to my list. I have a list of all the topics that we're looking to do for episodes. But hopefully we'll get to your episode soon. But we'll get to our topics, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Thank you very much for sticking around. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.